or 100 computers. All right. Instead of having to manually install Visual Studio on 100 computers, they're doing it kind of via a virtual machine, but it's still a work in progress. So it's like a 5-step process on a school loan computer to even get to the point where you could use Visual Studio. And it's a fairly complicated thing. It can take 20 minutes in order to get going the first time you do it. And it's a multi-step process. And if you're in programming one, it's a little throws you off. So one of my things is that I'm trying to find ways to still give access to students to do things. So I've actually started to implement .NET Fiddle embedded in my Canvas modules, just so that way they have a written tutorial that they can follow, but then they also have the .NET Fiddle C# online compiler, so they can just type in the code and see it work right there. And this automatically bypasses having to do all that Visual Studio stuff. Visual Studio is still obviously needed, but it's like, they're not waiting all this process. We're not behind it all. It's like, all right, we'll deal with that later. Your learning starts now. And I'm excited to see how it's going to work out, because my first class for programming one starts in a week, and I'm excited to see what I can bring to it.
Awesome. Oh, yeah, that's pretty awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to finding out more about how that goes.
So tell me, well, I have little things to talk. Well, I guess they're big things to me, but let's talk about you and everything that's been going on with you.
Okay. So Thought World went out of business. There was a startup and it lost its funding, and that's where I was working. And so for the last month, roughly, I have been looking for new work. And since then, I have interviewed at a few places. I have an interview with Meta coming up. I have an offer from one place already. And I'm sort of sitting on it at the moment. We're debating on a few things about what it would mean to move to different countries, because they have offices in like 60 different countries, and I'm kind of picking where we want to move.
That's a nice problem to be dealt.
Yes. And it changes finances too. So one of the things I'm really hoping for is to continue making the US wages while moving over to a place where the same type of development is like half the pay.
Yeah, that'd be incredible. And especially, I mean, we're in that industry. I know with COVID and everything, it's definitely been a talk about working from the office to working remotely. But I mean, if anything decouples the body from the mind, it is being able to work remote, doing what we do, right? One of my things at school that I've even pitched to my boss is like, I could teach code from anywhere in the world, right? We currently have Flex setup, which I brought up, which is we have new technology in the room. So you could either be in the room, you could be watching online, or you could do it asynchronously, so like self-guided. And this was a swing and a miss attempt, but it still worked out well. In Columbia Center in Seattle, they used to have a Starbucks on the 40th floor that you could it was open to the public. You could go into and have this amazing view of downtown Seattle. And for one of my last classes, I was actually going to try to host class from there to show that you're not relegated to being in your class or in your office to wherever. You can be wherever and still be learning. And I learned that when I got there, they had closed the 40th floor Starbucks, but they had one on the first floor. So if you looked it up, it showed that Starbucks was open, but they didn't do a very good job of specifying. But yeah. But what I got out of it was I got some beautiful pictures. I got a story, and I ended up teaching from Panera just down at the landing, which is further just by Lake Washington and Renton. But it went really well because it was a great experience. I think I even mentioned briefly to you, but I had the story. I told them what I was trying to do. I still nailed the point that I could teach from wherever. And then it was a great class because it was just an open, no attendance, no real lecture, but like 85% of my students still showed up. And of the ones that didn't show up, they were working. And then we ended up just having students being like, hey, let's look at our project. And the students were all helping one another. I actually just sat back and they were troubleshooting it live. It was a magical experience. I absolutely adored it. And I'm like, we can do this. This should be what a class is, not me sitting there talking to you being like, do this, do this, do this. We have so much potential to help each other and be wherever. So I guess that's my spiel. I'm trying to bring that to my school, Renton Tech, and I think I'm doing pretty well so far. So
I like that. I definitely like the idea of that where you're separating out. Here's like lecturing, and then here is let's just work on stuff. And
right.
pretty awesome.
Thank you.
I really like that idea. Like I've wanted to start kind of a tech school for a while that has been focused on people come in and it's free to attend. Well, free, but then it would have like an entry where you do an essay or something like that, show some project that you're working on, express some ideas, and then the idea is that we help you get there. And so it's a team effort. And then the idea is everything is free, but then as your product starts to actually become successful, assuming it does, then a certain percentage of its income goes back to the school to keep the school going.
That's such a fascinating idea. It's like a pre-startup. It is you have an idea, but is super prototype, and we'll give you kind of, in a way, Epic don't Epic and Unity kind of have a similar model in terms of just like you can use these tools for free, but once you start making money, we're going to start to get some money from it. But yours goes further. We're going to help you with the skills. We're going to help you network with people. We're going to give you all the potential that you need in order to go further. And when you are successful, because let's face it, you will be successful, then you can pay us back. It's kind of like paying it forward.
Yeah, even to the point of becoming an incubator of sorts. So like an incubation by default, but without actually being able to support rent and food and stuff like that. But then depending on people's ideas and the success of the success of the school, then we would actually have certain people who would get scholarships, so to speak, who are getting more out of it. It's just like, yeah, this person could do this, but they are currently working at Burger King to pay just to continue paying and support whatever living expenses they have. And so they don't have much time to do this stuff, but they're obviously very intelligent. They have a great concept they're sitting on, and it might never see the light of day if someone doesn't give that boost to start out with.
It's and this is my way of approaching all this too, and I feel that about this is the Ratatouille, a chef can come from anywhere kind of thing. And I 100% back that, because at Renton Tech, where we give the ability to get like degrees for a cheaper price. We're not $160,000 from UW kind of thing, but the knowledge and the use of it can really come from anywhere. It really comes down to the person and the opportunities. So by giving the opportunity, it should all come down to what do they want to do. That's a huge thing I push with my students. I let them know I'm straight out like, just having a degree is not going to get you the job as much as you want to. Yeah, not at all. Especially in our field, it's extremely competency based. You have to go in there and show you know what you're doing. So I say this to my students right away. I'm like, listen, if you all got A's in my class, good for you, but you still only know as much as the person sitting right next to you. What makes you stand out from them? And I have TAs right now that have been like killing it. I love it. One of them, call out to Dylan, who has like went above and beyond and created this beautiful portfolio and this beautiful blog and everything. And that's what I love to share, is that like the students who really want to push it, they can easily compete with anyone else. It comes down to them and what they're willing to do. It's all about their choice. And a lot of people tend to think, I made my choice to be in school and that's enough. It's like, no, you made your choice to be here. Now it's your choice to use those skills to make the thing that's going to get you the job and get you the career.
Yeah, I'm going to flat out say that, and you may disagree with this, but I'm going to flat out say that people don't need college. I didn't go to college, but I'm going to give some major caveats there. What you do need is you need to start following some kind of passion towards a trade skill that can make you money, that can earn you a place in the world. And if you don't go to college with that in mind, you're just stretching out high school. And that's really it. It's not going to stand out very much. There have been so many people I've interviewed who they've gone through college, they've done this stuff, and then you interview them and it's like, wait, you've been studying web technology for how long? And I'm just asking you to write out the basic HTML skeleton, like HTTP or HTTP, HTML
Doc
header,
type,
file.
doc type.
Yes. And then we get people in who, for the same interview or the same position, who are still in high school. They're just going to be getting
Yeah.
out of graduating in like a couple weeks, and they are way beyond in the skill set
Yes.
because they've just been applying themselves and doing this, and they're doing the job we want to hire someone for already. They're
Yeah.
ready to hit the ground running when they come in.
Yeah.
Now, I will say this as well. I blame colleges in a lot of cases. There are very few colleges, in my opinion, that stand out well. RTC is actually one of them. William attended RTC, also another friend of ours, Anna Mendez, and a few other people. And honestly, everyone that I have met from RTC who went to there for schooling, it stands out that somehow they seem like they have this incredible amount of applicable experience that I would hire someone from there in a heartbeat, just because I believe they could hit the ground running. Whereas most other colleges that that people leave, it doesn't have that kind of a footprint.
I'm going to I'll throw a caveat. I do not strictly disagree with you at all, because I believe it's down to people and about their potential too. And thank you so much for your kind words, especially coming from you. We hold you in the highest regard. And I agree, it's like theory is such an interesting thing, and we love to throw theory out, especially when it comes with like computer science. We love to hit the whiteboard and explain all this stuff, and that's perfect. And the thing is like education, not every teaching modality is the same for everyone, or methodology, right? It's like one of my best friends, Raina Ratchison, she can learn anything from a book. She is incredible. You sit her down in front of something and she's going to become like an expert level within weeks, and it's fantastic. I can't do that, but you throw me down in front of something and let me break it for a week, and I will come back with knowledge equal to an equal level, if not greater, because that's how I learn. And to me, that's how RTC, like one of my favorite things about RTC, it's applied. Like we have applied science stuff, which is weird that it's looked down upon, but it's like, I'm showing you I can do the work, and you're going to say, oh no, applied's not as good. You got to be kidding me, because I can show you right now. I can tell you about binary search. I can tell you about BFS, DFS and all that stuff. And I can show you how it works, and I can show you where I'll use it. And to me, that's far more important, because again, anyone can read from a book. I even say this, I hold the same standard to myself as I do both students and teachers. I can read to you from anything and sound really impressive, talking about big O notations and all that stuff. But if you can't show me where to use it, or you can't explain it well to me, you don't really know it. Why am I going to be giving you like 6-figure salary for that? Like, come on. So yeah. And then another call out is that like and I agree, some of the best programmers I've seen have absolutely come from RTC. But a special call out, and I say this to my students too, they were all project driven also. Like Anna, myself, another professor, Josh, we all made our own projects. We were passionate about the things we do, and we said, I want to know how this all works together, and we tied it together and we made these things. I do games. Anna's doing fractal geometry using graphics engines while going to Seattle. Josh is currently doing amazing things. He's a full stack developer, but he is also one of the best professors we have at our school. We have a lot of great professors right now. We got there because we're the warrior. We are the in the trenches programmers. We are the ones that have our hands on the keyboard, and we know, and we're passionate, and we're always making things. I always say I'm like the Adam Savage or the Alton Brown of programming. I'm the makerspace guy. I'm always like, let's duct tape some stuff and make something explode and see what happens.
Yeah. There is something that maybe you can help out with, and if not, maybe somebody watching the video can reach out to me afterwards. So I have some really interesting code that I didn't expect this to actually work. But when I restarted the project, everything was still running inside of designer mode. So this stuff operating in the background where it's manipulating the terrain in real time while it's in editor mode, I shut down the program and then I just started it back up while we were talking and it started running right away in editor mode, continuing this process of redesigning the terrain. There's a spot in the code where I would really like it if someone could explain to me why it works.
And to anyone who doesn't know, this is a real thing. That when things just work and we don't know why, that's almost more horrifying than if it doesn't work.
I will put this caveat on here that I specifically was going for a piece of code that would do this exact thing. And I was researching it online. So I tried to use what I had learned from various examples to apply it. But I could not get my head wrapped around exactly how it works. Now, here's the thing. So on this one, we have various points, and let me just turn stuff on and off for this. That is this one, and I'm going to turn off that one. So it's just the lines right now. Oh yeah, so this is broken into layers, so I can just turn things off or on for what it actually applies and makes changes to. Anyway, what happens is between each of these points, it draws a line where it cuts out part of the terrain. So it makes sure that there's a flat path that something can pass through. In order to do this, I needed to have a function that effectively says, for this point on the terrain, how close is it to a given line? Yep. So I give it a specific line and I loop through each of the lines just to see its distance. And I don't exactly know how to get the nearest point on a line. It's a math problem, and there's certainly some math solutions, and I found one. Actually, I found several, and my code is based on it, though I didn't copy it. I didn't copy and paste it, so I can't just search for it. All right, let me go into the code for this. So force graph terrain mod layer, connections layer, this one. All right, so I need not path wall shape, closest point on line segment, F12. So this is the line. It's not very long, or the function, but it's supposed to return a vector3 with the closest point on a line. So it's going to be somewhere within that line segment. Mm-hmm. So parts of it I understand. Like it's doing, we're getting a difference between, we're separating B and A. So we get like the general, we can get the distance and we can get the magnitude or the normal in this case, the direction it's going. But then we're also, this is where it starts to break apart and I don't understand how it's using it. Like, why are we doing a comparison between the position, the initial position and our difference? Like and then we're doing a dot. I've used dot and dot and cross products, but not for anything like this. And I'm lost here as to how on earth this code is working. So even if it's not this code, if someone can explain to me or share a video out of something that says, here is how you find the closest point in a line. Pass in a vector, pass in your vector3s for the start and stop, pass in your vector3 for your original position, and it returns a vector3. Yeah. That's the code that I want, but I want to understand why it works too.
I don't have an answer though. I'm more than happy. I mean, this is the stuff that excites me. I love to break things apart till I can understand it on like a basic level. I also want to show this as an example to my students in the future, because as programmers, we always joke, you know, if Stack Overflow went down, all programming would stop for the day, right? Which I also say Stack Overflow is the greatest bastion of like ego and arrogance when it comes to everyone talking about how good their code is compared to someone else's. I actually gave an example of something integrating an API into JavaScript, and I was like, this is the answer I got in Stack Overflow. It had 200 upvotes and I used it, and then the first comment underneath had 300 upvotes saying they were wrong.
Yeah.
I was like, all right. But yeah, I do not know offhand, and I think it's important to know to anyone who's interested in programming that it's not about copying and pasting the code. It's about understanding the code. And yes, your interviewers will directly ask you this stuff, so be prepared.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is also one of the things, like, so for anyone who's looking at this as like a career, or you're just starting out, I am an incredibly high level programmer. I'm very successful in what I do. I get paid quite well. I'm not going to blurt out the numbers on here, but to do 3D projects, to do 3D programming, where I'm doing things like procedural geometry. And I am not a good mathematician. If you write out stuff in mathematic notation, I am immediately lost. Now I have a defense for it, and I think this might actually fall to a lot of other people as well, depending on how you learned and what opportunities you had. But I learned how to program before I learned algebra. So as we were doing algebra in like high school and grade school or wherever we started learning it, but it was like the fourth grade that I started writing my own code. When I got into algebra and slopes and things like that, I'm like, I understand how to do this stuff. Here's the logic of how you do it, not the mathematics steps. Here's the logic of how it gets written out. And then all the places that were saying like, well, you have to do the work. You have to write out the work. I'm like, this is a headache or a pain to go through this and write out the work because I barely understand their mathematic notation.
Oh
but
my God.
Here's the answer. I can work out the answer in my head really quickly and easily because I have this series of processes that I would have entered into QBasic at the time. And that's how I get the results. And I just understand the process of how it works and get the values. And then at a certain point in like high school, things start like, as they start getting a little bit more into calculus, it started to depend more on the requirements of understanding all those layers of math building up to it that I did not learn. But at the same time, I'm doing this stuff. Like I've done gravity simulations for like circular gravity for like going around planets, magnetic poles. I can simulate all of that stuff, but if you ask me if I had to sit down in a room with mathematicians and explain why my stuff works, no, I'm lost.
I can't agree with you more on that. Like we love, in a way, we almost love to scare people by being like, oh, math or computer science is so math heavy. And it is, but the thing is, it's like, when we say math heavy, and when I think of the things that have knocked me on math, it wasn't that I didn't enjoy math. Like when it comes to lower levels of math, I'm very fast. Like I'm faster than almost everyone I know on calculations and everything. But there's this level that you hit where it's like, for me, it can take a while to, some people are fast learners. I'm a slow learner, but when I get it, like I exponentially get faster at it. Math is a difficult thing because you throw a lot of jargon and you throw a lot of these things, and it's done in such a dry way where it's just like a book with line. I did an online math class, and that was a destructive thing because it was like the exercises weren't very good. They didn't explain why I was doing things or where I was trying to go. It was just I failed all the time until I suddenly succeeded, and I didn't know why. And that is not a good way to learn anything. But it's like when one with math, we use like everything's X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, I get that when it comes to three-dimensional spaces. I'm an animator, so I'm very well aware of like all this stuff. But then you throw in jargon like Cartesian planes and things like that. It was like, those are the same things? I didn't know that. And so it's really easy to get overwhelmed with all this stuff. And I'm like, listen, I would rather learn equation like Bezier curves. I understand when it comes to art, right? Like you're currently creating paths with straight lines, throw in some Bezier curves, and now you're going to have curved trails and everything. And you can do that. That's the math behind it, and that's fantastic. But when it's just dry and on paper, you lose so many people. And I'm like, there are people that can be the best example shown here, fantastic at math, but we can't do it just the way it's been done right now. I'm trying to make education for people like me who are very intelligent, well, everyone else but me, I guess, who are very intelligent and have the wherewithal, but they don't have the tools or the materials for it. And that's my thing, is that There has to be a better way. I'd rather you learn about gravity by shooting a cannonball into the sky than just being told what it is on paper and being like, be impressed. Thanks,
Yeah,
guys. That helps a lot.
yeah. So I understand all this stuff at a very intuitive level, I guess,
Yes.
for how to work with this math. And so when I'm writing out equations and trying to figure out how it works, I take a look, does this work out does this come up with an answer that is close to what I would expect it to be? And because I can work out relative values of what they're supposed to be, or something pretty close to it, or approximations, I guess is a good term. But that's the validation I use to decide, is my code correct? But this even comes down to the point of like left and right. Like I forget left and right all the time. Same thing for like positive and negative in my code. I'm writing out equations and I know it's going to do in general the right thing, but I know I need to validate that it's going the correct direction. Is it going the way I want it or the exact opposite? And I have to check this stuff. That's definitely a very common issue. That and offsets. I throw myself off with offsets all the time.
Oh man.
I was actually debugging an earlier problem with this code, and I didn't even realize what the problem was initially, but the offset wasn't there. So when it was starting from 0, it was actually starting in the corner of the terrain, and it
Yeah.
wasn't offset to the center of the terrain where it was supposed to be.
That's the stuff we do. And the thing is, we enjoy that. Also, if you're just starting out getting into programming, all those red lines you get will be the least of your problems. Trust me, you'll love the red lines eventually because it's easily solved. The computer's helping you out. It's all that logic stuff that you will be up till 4 a.m. trying to figure out.
Are you talking about this stuff on the console?
Like, see, it tells us exactly where we're going, right? Like, okay, go there, fix this, okay, that. But yeah, like the offset thing, that's something the computer's doing exactly what it's told. Computers only do what they are told, but we told it the wrong thing and we have to figure that out.
Yeah. Oh, and actually I should do this. Tool dot, if this is causing one of the errors, tool equals no, then return. I'm just going to fix that right now. My code is actually set up where there's bugs that will just happen just from a timing thing, and then it just moves on and the code works right after.
Yeah.
So, and that's older stuff anyway. I was surprised it worked at all when it started up, because right now I'm actually having it serialized state of an object that is not part of a mono behavior. So I've got a separate class that was kind of an interesting thing. There's a whole serialization step where I'm passing out separate things of serialization. Basically, one of the problems is when I tried to actually have Unity store this data, in order to do this, well, not this one. This one's a little faster. It's 50, it's 1/6. So it's doing 50 million calculations in order to get these objects to move. Now that's for where it gets to from its starting point to its ending point, and it's taking about maybe 3 to 5 seconds to do that. But that's 50 million calculations to get that to work. They're very simple lines. Like there's multipliers in there, plenty of those, but just like additions, subtractions,
Basic operators.
Yeah, basic operatings. And most of them I'm not using things like square root. Some of them I am. Some of them I are. Anyway, I forgot where I was going with that.
Yeah, I think you were just flexing with your very impressive and very efficient kind of like a terraforming project you got going on here. I could just sit here and watch this. This is just very soothing.
Yeah, that's why I turned it on, why I set this up. It's just, I've really enjoyed this. I'm going to turn that one on too, though, so I get the spots. It's a little slower now, now that I turned on the, where it has the radius inside of here. If I go to this, I can increase the radius. Yeah. And it's very easy to see what's going on, but
yeah. I've had this on the back of my mind for the longest time, because I grew up loving the Avatar Last Airbender series, and I just feel like I really want to use this to create deformations with water and earth, like in all the different elements, and have them merged together and everything. And yes, I would absolutely do it in VR. In fact, one of my projects that I discussed years back but haven't been able to get to is I want to do a cooking simulator, but with Avatar powers. So it's like, oh, I need to cook something. So earthbending power, create a kiln, fire, heat it up. Oh, steam, throw water at it. So you're constantly just rotating through your different elements and everything to cook. And I actually started to create a prototype already with cooking things that was just like it sensed different heat elements and would change color depending on the proximity to different things. So it seems like it would be good enough. And I want to make your terraforming thing be really cool for making bread. Imagine just like deforming a piece of bread, throwing it in there, creates the whole mesh, heat it up, cook it. How cool would that be?
Ooh. Oh, I actually like that. Oh my God. I want to do that now. Where basically you just take an initial model and then you just take the exact mesh and you basically deform it into a blob. And
Mhm.
then you throw it in a virtual oven that you see, and then you watch it bake into whatever shape it's supposed to be. Here's the blob of materials that shapes into a sword.
We could do that. I mean, programmatically, I'm sure you could do it, but obviously defaulting back to my and anyone watching, like I'm heavier on the art side, where Dan's heavier on the code side, but we find ways to achieve the things we want with our tools. What matters is the end result. And yeah, like blend shapes, right? Just take this immaculate model, just like compress it all down into a blob and toss it in and just watch it bake up into whatever. And you can use the same result to like make sand castles out of sand.
Yeah. Actually, one of the things that came to mind, you were actually, I think, the second person to talk about turning this into a game. Let me see if I can find the note on it. Never mind, I don't see it. It was somewhere else, but oh, there we go. Moving with moving terrain like this was Cole Harmon in Redmond Eastside Game Dev. He was saying with moving terrain like this, I feel like you could get into some really wild and awesome game design ideas.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
exactly what you're pointing out. And when he said that, it occurred to me a really awesome concept that I'd love to see for this is that you have two worlds that are basically overlapping. And so it's literally like, so it's we have the terrain layout and structure of everything that's supposed to be there,
Mhm.
but as you follow a character like some alien or a fae or something like that, if you follow closely enough, you're seeing the world kind of alter around them. And so they're traveling a path where where they can walk on ground where it happens to be the same in both worlds,
Mhm.
but you can pass by them and
Oh.
enter into the other world, and it just switches almost like portals, except for the fact the entire world changes around you because you entered it.
Oh, wow. So, if it, I don't know if you've had a chance to experience it yet, but one of the greatest games I've ever played was a game called Outer Wilds. That is, I can't really speak about it. It's just one of the best exploration games I've ever experienced. That had so many great novel concepts, and one of the concepts was you explore in outer space all these close proximity planets with these novel ideas, and one of them are these brother sister planets that revolve around one another. But the thing is, one has a different gravity cycle than the other, I believe, where one's a sand planet, one's just a rock. And the thing is, over time, the sand gets sucked from one planet onto the other one. So I will say it's a time-based thing. So you have to get to the planet in time to be able to navigate it before it fills up with sand and go through all these crevasses. Combine that idea with your idea, and instead have these two worlds where you have to navigate in between the worlds as they are merging together, and you see the whole thing deforming around you as you're going inside. That would be, oh my God, that just makes me tingle thinking about it.
And I somehow switched to another game. But yeah, that
I
okay.
can't I can't speak too much about it because it is heavy into exploration and mystery. I've just never seen a game pull it off as well as this game. And it is just a delight. Like, I'll tell you this, they came out with a DLC that was also fantastic. I cannot tell you if the DLC already existed in game before I bought it, just because of the way you find it. If I do not know that I could have stumbled upon it by accident and been able to experience it. And obviously, like, you probably had to buy it, but it's just the way they hit it and the way they think things out and they make these puzzles. Like, for me as a game designer, this is such a huge thing, to hide in plain sight, to grow your skills. Like, in the game, you don't gain skills. It's not Metroidvania. You're not constantly getting new powers. Everything is just from logic and things you learn and like your notes you take, and is just one of the best examples of like what a game as a medium, as an art is. It's also absolutely beautiful. So yeah, that's my pitch for go get Outer Wilds. It's just wonderful. Not Outer Worlds, which is a fine game in its own right, but Outer Wilds, which is just an astounding game. And I will say this, my friend, I bought this and didn't play it for months because I didn't get it. Like, it doesn't really hold your hand. You kind of have to get a click moment. But my friend told me how much he loved it, and I was like, I'll give it another shot. And I will say this, I got it when my spaceship exploded and I fell away from a planet, so I thought I was going into nowhere. All of a sudden the world went gray around me and I ended up plummeting into water that I didn't see, and I came out and all of a sudden I was surrounded by 7 hurricanes just spinning around me, just crazily. Like, that was my aha moment. That was like the oh crap, I know what I'm getting into moment. You will experience your own, and it is absolutely worth it. Also, someone modded this to be in VR, and I will say it's not meant for VR because they have quantum puzzles that deal with time and space and gravity. So I quickly got sick, but it's also one of the best mods to VR I've ever seen, because all the tools, they were on a belt that didn't exist originally, and you could take them out and use them and whatever, and then fly spaceships. Yeah, if you want an excellent example of those novel ideas that you can do with geometry and everything, and then also just a great exploratory game with game design, check out Outer Wilds.
Awesome. This is not a paid advertisement, by the
This
way.
is not a paid advertisement, sorry. This is just me really, I get excited about things. I'm excited about this game.
That's yeah, I'll have to check that out. After I get my next job.
After you get
Yeah,
your
so-
next, yes.
so one thing that if this will be coming out soon, actually I don't know if it'll be public for my talk, but I give a talk at the GDC on interviewing practices, and I've already gotten some feedback from some recruiters who have attended it and saying that this is spot on, that this is exactly like a type of thing that needs to be said. I guess I'll say one key part of it, that you're never really applying for the job itself. The description is an idea of how you might fit into a team, because you're almost always joining a team. And when you start realizing that, then you can start changing what you're interviewing for, because you can start recognizing there's different ways you could fit into it, and how do you express the best shape that will suit you. Anyway.
As someone who's seen this talk, or at least older versions of it, it's absolutely wonderful. It has altered the way I think about the whole process. And even when I'm learning skills, not just I need to learn this, but what value does it bring to me and how can I use that to expand in the future? And I teach that to my students, because we're really just all about, we're skill collectors to bring our skills and add value to something. And if you pitch yourself like that and not just a piece of paper, it empowers you and it gives you more to talk about with the employers than just, I want a job.
Yeah, so much. And the way that you interview literally changes how much income you get from the positions you interview for as well. And it also changes things like a lot of stuff has really changed to I've literally almost have this verbatim. I can't remember the exact word, so I'll be as close as I can. It's like, I can see from your background that you've done a lot of technical stuff, so I'm not even going to bother you with technical questions for a thing that I'm doing at a very high level of advanced programming and helping to lead others and shape technology for companies. And we're not going to bother interviewing on that. Interviews do change the nature of them, what you can do as a junior, what you can do as a senior, what you can do after a senior level. And there's so much that changes, and understanding that and shaping your resume from one stage to the next really just does mind-boggling things to how much you can make and what you get what influence you get.
Mhm. Also, it helps being able to just, I think something that does also help besides your history and your knowledge, everything is like you're always talking and teaching and showing and documenting. And that's crazy important because when people look, and we've talked about this and you've helped me out with this, I'm horrible writing resumes because who I am is I have far more of an art mind than I am like a super analytical mind. So condensing myself down into Word is like almost a painful process. But as you said, you know me as being this person, and I'm always talking art and I'm always showing off like animated GIFs and everything. And so we being able to document that stuff, exactly, yes, be able to show off our stuff, document that stuff. People can look at videos and see it's not just like I know how to do C#. It's I am excited about talking C# and how I can implement it in other places, because that's the kind of person they will want you to be on their team, because there's a lot of people that, let's face it, there are free code academies everywhere for a reason. Anyone can learn code, but you have to want to do code. And then also like you will be driven far further by your passions. Dan obviously has a passion for the things he's doing, and they know that when they put Dan into any place that he wants, he's going to go further faster because of it. If I were to put him in a Burger King, I'm sure he could flip all the burgers he wants. It doesn't mean he's gonna be passionate about it. He'll probably be ending up making an automation for it and then having the burgers deform on you while you eat them. So, and that's what he would be hired for. And let's face it, Burger King would make more money if they had auto deforming burgers, because that would be a thing to sell. I'm
This
also good at
sounds,
making up random ideas, so reach out to me.
yeah, we are informally starting a new game jam now, and that is the theme.
Deforming food. Oh, but yeah, yeah. I'm excited. Like, with the way things are going with me right now, I'm in good positions. I'm gonna try to make GDC next year. But I am super excited that you were able to give your fantastic talk, because I think I've heard it at least twice and have referenced it, and I even reference it in my materials for my students, because I'm like, this is what you want. Don't just listen to me tell you about loops. Go get the job.
Yeah, and I've already made changes to my GDC to my resume from what I've shown in the videos at the GDC. It's still based on the same types of things, but I had more discussions with recruiters afterwards, because after I finished my videos, that's when the company I was working for went under. That it was a startup and they ran out of money, so that happens. But so I needed to readdress my resume, and one of the first things I did was talk to recruiters in the countries that I was interested in and say, what kinds of things stand out to you? What on my resume looks good or doesn't look good? And I made some changes based on that.
I think another point to that is, one, we're always growing, which we have to. A lot of people think you learn something once and that's it. As like, that's not programming. Yeah, we build it once and then move on to the next thing. That's programming. That's why we automate things, because it's like we don't do the same thing over and over. And then two is that the soft skills, a lot of, there's been that whole previous mystique of the programmer in the basement, and this is how they do things right now. We're far away from that now. It's like they would rather have someone, you can be taught code, but if you're that guy that no one wants to work with, what good is it? Like, why should I bring you onto my team? Having soft skills, reaching out, showing that you appreciate people and their knowledge, talking with them, showing that you're passionate, that's all just as important. I can tell you right now, I've heard from multiple people at Amazon that they will hire someone who does not have coding skills but is a great fit for the company, and they will teach them code. Keep this in
Yeah,
mind, because yeah, I've seen those interviews. They are not easy, but if you show that you're a person that can fit in there, that's a rarer unicorn than just someone who can write code. So
yeah, and that's one of the other things where it's like they will hire you whether or not you know the programming languages that they're targeting.
yes.
That was one of the big things that really stood out to me when I was interviewing with them before. First off, I didn't pass the interview. I want to call that out, that I don't pass every interview I go to. It doesn't matter how much magical unicorn science I apply to it. Um, the thing is, there's always going to be bad interviews where sometimes you just miss things. Sometimes you are asked specific things that are just not in your wheelhouse. Like, I am a bad mathematician. I still understand big O notation. I have a very intuitive knowledge of how it works, so I can just eyeball it really well without having to like write out the details of it. Occasionally, I'll still get a variable wrong in it if I actually do try writing it out. But for the most part, I get the general performance issues. I disagree with big O notation on many counts, just based on the nature that it's focused on the architecture primarily, and it loses a lot of the lower level stuff. For instance, if you're in a system that has a math, we have a math command, and we're doing square roots, it counts that as 1, whereas it also counts 2 plus 2 as 1. So it's either one of those equations costs the exact same in big O notation, but in game development, there is a huge difference there. And I get the thing. I get it. Like, why you can't focus on the little things like that, and that they're focused on how do you resolve architecture. But in game development, big O notation, in my opinion, really needs to include the little things.
Yeah, I agree. And it's such a fascinating thing that you bring that up, because it's like, and something I tell students is, on a really basic level, everything is 1, primitive data, and 2, it's individual single lines of code. And as you say, like, if you have a math library, it's doing more than a single calculation. It's still going to have all those other things. It's still going to have it's still going to be using loops and everything to do those calculations. And that's a far more complex thing than a single line of code. You're not calculating single lines of code. You have to calculate everything else in the middle of it. That's like me taking an entire game and then calling it all with a single method in start and being like, it's big O1. It instantly just calls because it's only calling this one line.
Yes. Yeah. And I put that in a DLL, so I don't even see the code anymore. And my new command just calls this.
It's magic. It's fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
oh my God, you totally could cheat big O notation with that.
Oh, I want that to be the next GDC talk you do, because if you don't do it, I will, because that's absolutely my bag. I tell people that as a programmer, you are the wizards of the world. You will go out there and you will just be like, I am a programmer, and they don't know what you do or how you do it, but they're just like, ooh, you work with code, magical. It's like,
yes.
Yeah, but and to anyone who doesn't know, we are translators. Computers have logic, humans have logic. Your job is to be able to understand the language of the computer and translate that thought into another. That's it. Demystified. There's a lot more that goes on to it, but that's what we do.
Yes, I'll agree with that, but I also will say that I feel you were more correct on the wizard statement. We are wizards.
you just want to be a wizard, is what I'm hearing.
Okay, well, let's take a look at this, at the science of magic. Generally, when you look at magic, at the idea of magic, it's written that it works because people believe it works. And then there's theory or ideas that in the past, and I'm not saying I believe in this, but I like the concept of it, that people stopped using it. Something happened and people stopped using it, so it doesn't do as much anymore. And so you have these stories of like these great magic things that of course we just all read as like fantasy. But imagine the idea that that was real, and that there was magic and it worked because people believed it worked. And it was just everyday stuff. Not everybody could do it. A lot of people could try to learn. They could use pieces of it. They would carry around little lights or something so they could walk around. The magic set up so it could work. Computer programmers are the exact same way. The power that we wield is amazing, but it only exists because everybody agrees that computers do something. Everything I code is inside of a digital world. Yes. It does digital things. Sometimes that can influence like physical things, like it'll print something out on paper, but or move a mechanical arm. But in general, I am controlling something that only works because everyone believes it does. If everybody just stopped believing that computers could accomplish anything and stopped using them, it wouldn't matter how great of a coder I was. I wouldn't be able to accomplish anything within the world. It would become a useless thing.
one, I'm gonna get you a wizard hat because I really think that's what this pitch was for, and I'm fine with that. And two, I agree, but I would still believe it's mad like, and the thing with like on the magic thing is it's still result based, right? Like even if and obviously we don't live in a world where even if we show proof we would not believe it, but like you would still, like, if people did believe in a calculator, you can still end up getting a result from the things that you do with said calculator, and you would believe that. I may believe that little gnomes live inside the calculator and that you're just whipping them into shape to do your calculations, which if you've seen what people have done with Little Big Planet, that's a thing, and that's really impressive. It's still demonstrable, but that said, a lot of the things we do is based off of belief that we can accomplish something. In fact, isn't that in a way it's like science, right? Like when we achieve great things, it's because we believe that we can accomplish said things, and when we lose focus of that, it's then we take step backs, and that there's a lot of great things we can do. And then I think a lot of the problem comes with, like, we can achieve great things, it's just the reason why can be corrupted, and we all know this. We all see things that can be achieving far better than they are, but they are monetized or manipulated for a separate purpose, blah blah blah. I'm not going to go into my whole Bioshock spiel of separating living under the sea in Rapture and blah blah blah, but we are capable. We see further into the future and we say that we can accomplish this, and we do it. You're absolutely right. With a box where things don't actually exist, we are telling it to do things, but then it's returning values to us that we can do things with. It is translating other information into things that we can convert it to into the real world. So it's actually a two-way process in doing that. And that's really cool now that I think of it. So thank you for inspiring me on that one.
Yes. You're a wizard, William.
Hufflepuff for the win. I'm technically Gryffindor, but I just float between schools. I get along with everyone.
Yeah. And I keep bringing up examples of things that are said at times.
Yes.
Of course, there's also, let's see. Now I'm trying to find some of the coding memes that would be really good. Evolution of storage.
There's so many of them.
Oh, wow. Punch cards, floppy disks that were actually pretty firm, and then CDs, USB keys. That's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I do enjoy seeing people talk about, like, when you had a USB, when you had a CD, when you had these things, people knew what they were. But now everyone talks about the cloud, but a large amount of people don't actually know what the cloud is, and they speak of it as like a magical thing. It's in the same vein as like the dark web and things like that. They speak about it as it's some mystical thing. It's like, it's not mystical. It's just a fancier name for something that's like a server or a group of websites that you can't visit using Google. That's what it is. It's you're not a part. It's just you understood it with these words, and I'm glad you do. It makes the conversation simpler.
I feel like maybe this would be we could do a whole show just on showing memes about programming and game development and
explaining. Yeah, nothing a series that's all about explaining the joke.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, I couldn't find the one that I was looking for, but I was trying to find the ones where it's like, I am a god, and I completely regret all of my life's decisions. Programming meme, I am a god. There we go. 2 states of every programmer. I am a god. I have no idea what I'm doing. I regret my life's decisions.
Yeah. And it can transition with a single line of code.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, I love to show examples to my students where I break something, because that's another thing. I try to demystify the whole, like, teachers teachers know everything and we just magically do this stuff. I'm like, no, I spent hundreds and thousands of hours doing this stuff so you can see me get it right on the first time. And it's always weird when I do something and it works right away, and so suddenly I have to adapt, to be like, all right, well now I have to break this in a different way to show you. I was a part of my I'm a part of a small team working on a immersive VR language learning app, and a friend of mine was like, I don't get it, does everyone else just know code? I don't. She's a brilliant coder. She was just kind of down to the dumps. So I was like, I have to implement these systems into this game in order to add interactivity, and I will show you how I break it as I do it. And so for the next 30 minutes, I walked her through the whole process, and it worked. And that was really frustrating for me because I just showed her magically how I did like this 30-step process of having interactivity happen in VR, and it just magically worked. And I'm like, I don't know why. I'm sorry, this is a bad example.
That's awesome. I love that.
It just happens. It just happens.
Yeah.
Oh,
I remember when I was first learning programming that at first it's like, okay, why isn't it working? And then a little bit later, it becomes, why did it work the first time I ran it? I just wrote this code. There had to have been something wrong with it. That becomes that scary point where, okay, I know there's a bug because history has told me there is always a bug.
and it's like, and the joke is real that, you know, when you see the comments on like old code, it's like, this line shouldn't do anything, but if you remove it, everything else breaks, so just leave it in. Because it's a machine. Code itself is a machine with lots of moving parts. On its own basic level, computer only understands binary, zeros and ones, and every language built on top of that is basically interpreting human language into computer. The thing is, there's a billion moving parts with 1,000 different teams constantly updating all this stuff, and they could change something and all of a sudden it'll change your code out of nowhere, and that's just going to create a very bad day. In fact, if you've heard about the issues with GitHub happening recently where things go down and all of a sudden people can't work, is because they're using someone else's code hosted on basically a cloud or something, and that goes down, so your code doesn't work, and it just snowballs. It's the snowball effect.
And you brought up something just a minute ago about ones and zeros being the way the computers work. And there is a thing that's changing. So first off, we have quantum computing that's becoming a thing, and there's first level quantum computers that are out there, but these are like corporation only, certain schools only. This is not a home computer thing.
It takes a lot to make quantum computing work. We are a long way away from having a quantum cell phone. So yeah.
There is also a fascinating new development reusing old existing technology, flash RAM. And flash RAM stores memory by basically holding a bunch of electrons in place. So it prevents more electrons from coming through. And so it changes the signals to like zeros and ones holding onto that. The thing is that the way that it was written, you can actually, on some of the devices, you can control how many electrons and how much flow, which basically allows you, for the most part, to convert some of the old flash RAM hardware into basically an AI system where it uses voltage to get mostly accurate processing, where it can do what would take a computer millions of calculations, it can do in an instant. Like literally an instant of it just sets what the values are. As soon as it passes through, it puts its input data on the front of it. It immediately has the output data as a voltage level, and based on the voltage level you get, that's your answer.
That's incredible.
And yeah, because AI doesn't need to be accurate. It needs to be like 80% accurate, depending on what it's doing. And so you lose some of the accuracy with it, but this is one of the few things like AI where we need to do huge amounts of calculations, only that's very expensive on typical processing. But if we pass it off to just a voltage meter, a couple series of resistors in there, dynamic resistors, and you've got you've got this great system that can do AI in a heartbeat. And so there's a place that's already doing this, and I watched a video on that recently. It's just this great technology, and I can't wait. Like I'm waiting for the point that we start seeing AI processor cards that just become a part
Ooh.
of the. I don't think it'll become a part of the CPU. Like it might, but I feel like that would be a separate thing on the motherboard.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I really like that idea and all the potential behind it, but I can see there being a big hurdle to that becoming commonplace just because of the stigma behind AI and people not really understanding it. Because let's face it, we've had a lot of great films that talk about AI, but in such a negative connotation that people are like, I don't want to do this, and then Big Brother and all this stuff. And I agree, but it's like, again, the computer's only doing what it's told, right? It's only doing that. It's what we do. It's that return value that we get and how we use it, that can be the evil thing. So I think it's going to be a little ways out, but I would love to see that because AI takes is a huge computational hit too, especially when it comes to games. Could you we would be on a whole new level if we had off put that into an AI chipset. We could really, man, we could really replicate a lot of amazing. We could make, let's face it, people are not nearly as complex as they think they are a lot of the time. And there's a reason why YouTube can recommend things to you that you never even thought you would like, but all of a sudden you magically like. And that's because they just get a lot of relational information based on people who like things tangentially the way that you like. And they're like, well, 70% of the people also like this video, so check it out. And hey, maybe you do like that video, maybe you don't.
Mhm.
So AI is essentially like a complex if else structure. And if you consider, like, Dan is a wealth of knowledge, and so his AI if else structure is going to be complex, but still pulling all this information from experiences in life and whatnot, and just putting weighted values in there, he's more likely to agree with this than that. And then that's defining his result, the thing he's going to say, in this way he's going to respond. So a lot of people work in that same way. So I think even with 80%, and especially when you see what people do with TikTok and whatnot, it's going to be easy to replicate that kind of mindset fairly quickly. So yeah, I want to see what we do. I like basically Grand Theft Auto. Well, was it GT3? Is it GT3? That's the AI, like the AI processing kind of like communication thing.
I don't know. I haven't
Uh,
heard anything about that.
I'm not doing it justice, but yeah, it's a really complex thing where it's like you can speak to it and it does a relatively good job of parsing and communicating with you. They've even done things where it's like give a story prompt and it will create a story based on the way you respond, and it can go really off track or it can be spot on. Like I'll send it to you. I think it's like GT3 Dungeon that gave you a couple of prompts and it created a story. For me, it created this complex story that kind of went off the
Oh,
rails. Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
I don't know if that's a specific. Yeah, there's a lot of things that are starting to use it, like the cognitive AIs, where it starts
something
to
like, yeah, we've
understand the
even looked into
general,
it for a VR
like,
thing.
yeah, and then you program up key topic responses and what types of things you're responding to. And then the AI does pretty incredible job of figuring out what you're saying and how it relates to something that's a topic that it could respond to.
Exactly. It's GPT-3. And they've had these like little novel ways to use it. And it was funny because it definitely responds to you. The story I created on GPT-3, like Dungeons, was this weird one because I like weird stories. But my friend Dee, who is brilliant, she's also very direct. And hers ended up being an assassination story there, where the story was just like, we will give you this much money to assassinate the mayor. And she was like, okay. And her story ended after 2 lines and she just got a bunch of money. And I was like, that is the most D thing in the world. It was just direct and to the point and it told your story. So yeah, like
Okay,
things are
so
getting there, and getting they're very impressive. Like they're not going to trick someone. I feel it's not about it's not about fudging the single interactions. It's about the longer you go on, the easier it is to call out, right? Like having a conversation and having that build up. that is where all the calculations and all that stuff's going to come into play. That's why it's so easy for YouTube to just recommend one video, because all they have to do is show you that one video. But if you had to have a conversation with something like that, it's like you're going to lose track. This doesn't make any sense anymore. What are you talking about? It's not adapting very well. It's still pulling off of preset data on very single situational information. So, but when you can pull it off, that's when it's magical. In fact, you see that a lot in games. In fact, I'll use Deus Ex. This was a storytelling thing, but this is why it felt magical. The original Deus Ex had a moment where you talked with a single character, and it's just a story beat. You don't know what's going to happen. You think a character is going to die, and then like 20 missions later, they come back and they responded to the things you do, and they like had all that response, everything. It wasn't AI, it was just story beats. But that's why it's impressive, right? It's not like the single response. Oh, do you like this? They are happy, they are sad. It's like they responded to what you did, and they had their own life and their own situations, and that's how it all played out. I don't think we're there yet, but I think offboarding AI, that will get us, that will at least give us a little bit more power to try to accomplish it. We have a long way to go.
Yeah. I figured one other thing I'd bring up, but we're closing in on about an hour now. Actually, I don't know how much time we've been recording, but a little bit, about an hour now. So my mentions before about how I suck at math. I've been trying to learn the learning AI systems. Like I've understood how to produce teaching models, how to generally use them to execute stuff. But the way that I end up learning this stuff is by reinventing the wheel. So I've been putting a huge amount of study into how the mathematics are generated to produce each one of the learning nodes, the points that the data travels through to be able to figure it out. And I have a general idea of how it works, but I'm planning on actually writing a test case for it soon. And I'm not sure exactly how yet. I've got some stuff to work out on it. But it's kind of in a sense, it's kind of a problem that's one of the ways I have to learn it, that I'm missing certain mathematical model or information and knowledge. But once I come out the other side of it, I'm going to know why it works inside and out, and then I'll be able to understand the rest of the AI systems and how they work, just because I know how this works on the inside level. So when they're fixing or making a change to it, I understand why those are there.
So what I hear is that you're just a part of the matrix, and like they download code for you. So right,
it takes a lot of time to download this.
That's awesome. And if I have it my way, I'm going to figure out a way so that we can actually teach people all that in between stuff and make it a way that's approachable so that you can understand it without having to sit through a bunch of books.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome. USB slot right there. I'm good with that.
Right, like that's my goal. I even told my boss, I'm like, listen, my whole thing is I want to make education as approachable and fun as possible, because video games have a stigma, right? A lot of people look at them as time wasters. I'm like, they're not. What they are is they're teaching. It's actually, there are mechanics in which they're teaching, and then you use those mechanics in the worlds built by the designers. Why couldn't we do that with educational stuff? So yeah, okay, that's my goal.
I'm actually getting a phone call, and I'm gonna have to go. So it's been about an hour.
I hope it's good. Good luck. Talk to you later.
Bye.